November 2nd, 1944. Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Private Eddie Slovik stood in a foxhole, hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold his rifle steady. Not from cold, though November in Germany bit through like it was paper. Not from exhaustion, though 3 days without real sleep had hollowed him out. He shook because 50 yards ahead, through the skeletal trees stripped bare by artillery, German soldiers were digging in, and his finger, resting on the trigger, wouldn't move. Around him, Baker Company, 28th Infantry Division, fired methodically. The sharp crack of M1 Garand's, the stutter of the bar, the thump of mortars walking shells through enemy positions. Combat sounds, killing sounds, sounds Eddie Slovik couldn't make himself add to. Sergeant Tanky crawled over, mud on his face, rage in his eyes. Slovik, what the hell are you doing? Fire your weapon. Eddie's mouth moved. No words came out, just a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. Are you refusing a direct order in combat? Eddie looked at the German position, saw movement, a helmet, a face, a human being who wanted to live as desperately as Eddie wanted to live. His finger froze. That moment of paralysis would cost him everything. But before we reveal how this soldier's conscience became his death sentence, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. This story needs to be heard. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. If you or your family served in World War II, we especially want to hear your story. What you're about to witness is the true story of how fear conquered duty, how the military justice system worked with brutal efficiency, and how one man's inability to kill became America's most controversial execution since the Civil War. Eddie Slovik never wanted to be a soldier. At 24 years old, he stood 5 feet 5 inches, weighed 130 pounds dripping wet, and had a criminal record that should have kept him out of the Army permanently. Petty theft mostly, breaking and entering, the kind of crimes desperate kids committed during the Depression when stealing bread meant survival. He'd done time, 4 years at the Ionia Reformatory, got out in 1942, found work at the Montella Plumbing Company, met Antoinette Wisniewski. They married in November 1942. She was everything Eddie wasn't. Strong, steady, certain. She worked at the same plumbing company. They had a tiny apartment, not much money, but something Eddie had never had before. Stability. Then came the draft notice. January 1944. His criminal record should have disqualified him. Should have. But by 1944, the Army needed bodies. Needed them desperately. The hedgerow fighting in France was consuming entire divisions. Good men, trained men, died by the hundreds. The replacement system couldn't keep pace. So they started taking criminals. Eddie Slovik, convicted felon, became Private Eddie Slovik, 109th Infantry Regiment. Inducted, trained, shipped to Europe in 6 months. Antoinette stood on the platform at Detroit's Michigan Central Station when his train pulled out. Eddie pressed his hand against a window. She pressed hers against the glass from outside. The train moved. Their hands separated. She mouthed something he couldn't hear over the engine noise. He'd learn later she'd said, "Come back. Just come back. I don't care how. Just come back alive." Eddie failed at being a soldier from day one. Drill Sergeant Morrison spotted it immediately. Spotted the fear that radiated off Eddie like heat. Spotted the hesitation, the trembling hands, the way Eddie flinched at loud noises. "Slovik, you scared of your own rifle?" Eddie stood at attention. Rifle held wrong, sweat pouring down his face despite the morning cool. "No, Sergeant." "Then why are you holding it like it's going to bite you?" "Because it might," Eddie thought. "Because this thing kills people. Because I don't want to kill people." He said none of this. Just adjusted his grip. Tried again, failed again. Morrison got in his face. So close Eddie could smell coffee and cigarettes. "You think the Krauts are going to wait while you figure out which end the bullets come out of? You think they're going to be gentle with you?" "No, Sergeant." "Then get your head straight. This rifle is your best friend. It keeps you alive. You better learn to love it." Eddie tried. God knows he tried. Spent extra hours on the range. Practice in his bunk at night. Dry firing until his trigger finger cramped. force himself to load live ammunition, and aim at paper silhouettes downrange. The targets had concentric circles, human-shaped, score by where you hit. Headshots, chest shots, gut shots. Each one calculated to teach you where to aim to kill a man efficiently. Eddie fired. The rifle kicked. Downrange, a hole appeared in the target's shoulder. Off-center. Non-lethal if it had been real. Morrison checked through binoculars. Slovik, you trying to tickle him? Center mass. Kill the target. Kill the target. Easy to say when the target was paper. Eddie qualified. Barely. Lowest acceptable score. Just good enough to pass. Just skilled enough to be considered marginally competent with the weapon he'd have to carry into combat. They shipped him overseas in August. He crossed the Atlantic on a transport packed with thousands of other replacements. Seasick men vomiting into buckets. Scared men writing last letters. Brave men pretending they weren't terrified. Eddie wrote to Antoinette every night. My darling wife, I miss you more than I can say. I'm not built for this. You know that. You've always known. I'm trying to be brave, trying to do my duty. But inside, I'm still that scared kid from Detroit who just wants to come home. If something happens to me, know that I loved you. Know that you made my life worth living. Know that whatever comes next, I'll face it thinking of you. Forever yours, Eddie. Eddie landed in France 2 months after D-Day. The beaches were cleared, but evidence remained. Twisted metal, destroyed bunkers, crosses, thousands of white crosses marking temporary graves. He stared at those crosses as his transport moved through, counted them compulsively, stopped at 300. Too many boys who'd never go home. Private Johnny Tankey, his squad leader, noticed. First time seeing dead men, Slovik. First time seeing this many. Get used to it. Where we're going, there's plenty more. They joined the 109th Infantry at a replacement depot near Elbeuf. The regiment had been in continuous combat since landing at Utah Beach. They'd lost 1,500 men, 40% casualties. The survivors looked ancient despite most being under 25. Eddie was assigned to Company G. His sergeant, a veteran named Hannah, took one look at Eddie's scared rabbit expression and sighed. Another green replacement. You ever fired at a living target, Slovik? No, Sergeant. You ever seen a man die? No, Sergeant. You scared? Eddie hesitated, thought about lying. Couldn't. Yes, Sergeant. Hannah almost smiled. Almost. Good. Scared men stay alive longer than brave men. Just make sure you shoot when I tell you to shoot. Understand? Yes, Sergeant. They moved up to the front on September 8th. The Hürtgen forest, where the 28th Division would spend the next 3 months dying in the worst meat grinder of the Western Front. The Hürtgen was held in autumn colors. Dense evergreen forest turned into killing ground. German defenders dug bunkers so deep American artillery couldn't touch them. Minefields turned every step into Russian roulette. Artillery bursts in the treetops showered men with wooden shrapnel that wounded worse than metal. Company G took its position on October 2nd, dug foxholes in earth that had already seen too much blood, waited for orders that would send them forward into certain death. Eddie sat in his foxhole, rifle across his lap, and understood with absolute clarity that he was going to die here. Not might die, would die. The math was simple. Company G had 180 men. They'd lost 40 in the last week. 22% casualties. At that rate, Eddie had maybe 3 weeks before a bullet or shell fragment found him. Unless he shot first. Unless he killed before being killed. Private Grimes occupied the foxhole, to Eddie's left. Farm boy from Iowa. 19 years old. Blonde hair and blue eyes and a laugh that sounded like innocence felt. You okay, Eddie? Grimes asked during a quiet moment between artillery barges. No, me neither. I'm terrified. How do you do it? How do you shoot them? Grimes looked confused. What do you mean? They're shooting at us. It's them or us. But they're people. Human beings with families and... Stop. Grimes's voice went hard. Don't think like that. You think like that, you freeze. You freeze, you die. We all die. Just point and shoot. Don't think. Don't think. The universal soldier's advice. Turn off your brain. Follow orders. Kill without questioning. Eddie tried. When the next firefight erupted, Germans probing their position, testing defenses, Eddie raised his rifle, aimed at muzzle flashes in the dark forest. His finger found the trigger. Couldn't pull it. Around him, Company G fired. Grimes to his left, emptying his clip. Corporal Davis to his right, working the bar in controlled bursts. Everyone shooting. Everyone killing. Except Eddie. He fired once. Straight up into the trees. Away from the enemy. The rifle kicked. He worked the bolt. Fired again. Same angle. Harmless. Waste of ammunition. But at least it looked like he was participating. The firefight ended. Germans withdrew. Company G counted casualties. 3 wounded. None dead. A good night by Hürtgen standards. Sergeant Hanna found Eddie after. Slovik, how many rounds you fire? 8, Sergeant. Hit anything? Eddie looked at the ground. I don't think so, Sergeant. You don't think? Either you hit them or you didn't. Hanna waited. Eddie said nothing. The sergeant sighed. Practice your aim. Tomorrow might matter. It came during a German counterattack. Dawn. Fog thick enough to cut. Company G held a position on a ridgeline overlooking a valley where German armor had been spotted. Orders were simple. Hold the ridge. No retreat. No surrender. Die in place if necessary. The Germans came through the fog like ghosts. Infantry advancing behind tank support. MG-42S opening up. The sound, that terrible ripping cloth sound, cutting through morning air. Positions. Hanna screamed. Fire at will. Company G responded. 70 men firing downhill at an enemy they could barely see. Tracers stabbing into fog. The clang of bullets hitting tank armor. The screams of men being hit. Eddie lay in his foxhole, rifle aimed downhill. Saw shapes moving through fog. German shapes. Enemy shapes. Human shapes. His finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. That's all it took. 2 pounds and a man would die. A son, a brother, maybe a father. Dead because Eddie Slovik decided his life mattered more. He couldn't do it. Slovik. Grimes screamed from the next foxhole. Fire. For God's sake, fire. Eddie's hands shook so badly the rifle barrel drew circles. He tried to aim, tried to breathe, tried to make his finger move. It wouldn't. A German soldier emerged from the fog, 20 yards away, young, Eddie's age, carrying a rifle, looking directly at Eddie. Time stopped. The German raised his weapon. Eddie had a clear shot, perfect shot, center mass. Couldn't miss. Grimes fired first. The German dropped. His rifle clattered on stones. He lay still. Grimes looked at Eddie, understanding dawning. You didn't shoot. I couldn't. He was about to kill you. I know. And you couldn't pull the trigger. I'm sorry. Grimes's face went through emotions too fast to track. Anger, confusion, fear, pity. He settled on something Eddie couldn't identify. You're going to get us all killed. The counterattack broke. Germans withdrew. Company G held the ridge. 12 men wounded, 3 dead, including Corporal Davis, the bar gunner who'd been on Eddie's right. Sergeant Hanna found Eddie after the casualty count. Slovik, how many rounds? None, Sergeant. Silence. Long enough Eddie could hear his own heartbeat. None. I couldn't shoot them, Sergeant. Couldn't or wouldn't? Does it matter? Hanna grabbed Eddie's collar, pulled him close. Not violent, just desperate. Yes, it matters. Every rifle that doesn't fire is one more German who gets to keep shooting at us. Your weapon staying silent got Davis killed. You understand that? Eddie did understand. Had understood the moment Davis fell. Had understood that his conscience had a body count. I'm sorry, Sergeant. Sorry. Hanna shoved him back. Sorry means nothing. Dead men don't care about sorry. He turned to walk away. Stopped. Spoke without looking back. You're done, Slovik. You're not fit for combat. I'm sending you to the rear. Relief flooded through Eddie. Relief and shame in equal measure. They pulled Eddie from the line, assigned him to a rear area supply depot. Safe work, non-combat duty, loading trucks, sorting equipment, surviving. He should have been grateful. He was terrified because rear area duty in the Hürtgen wasn't truly safe. Artillery still fell. Snipers still hunted. The division needed every rifle on the line. Eventually, they'd send him back up. Private Tanky found him in the supply tent that evening. Heard you got pulled out. Yeah. Heard you wouldn't shoot. Eddie didn't respond. What could he say? I get it, Tanky said quietly. I don't agree, but I get it. Some men aren't built for killing. That's not weakness. That's just how you're wired. Hannah says it got Davis killed. Maybe Davis got himself killed. That's combat. Men die. Not always because someone failed. Sometimes just because. Eddie looked up. What do I do? You got 3 choices. 1, go back up, force yourself to shoot, probably die or get someone else killed. 2, stay back here, hope they forget about you, probably get sent up anyway when casualties mount. 3, desert. The word hung between them like smoke from burning cities. I can't desert. That's treason? Cowardice? Yeah, it's also survival. Tanky pulled out a cigarette, lit it, offered one to Eddie, who shook his head. Look, I'm not telling you what to do, but the army is going to make you choose. Better you choose deliberately than have the choice made for you. That night, Eddie wrote to Antoinette, My darling, I'm in a terrible position. I can't explain details. Censors would cut it anyway. But know this, I'm not brave enough to die. I'm just not. I see men being killed around me, and I think about you, about our life, about coming home. And I can't make myself risk that. I can't make myself pull the trigger, knowing it might mean never seeing you again. I don't know what happens next, but if you stop getting letters, know I didn't stop loving you. I just stopped being able to keep writing. Always yours, Eddie. Eddie made his decision at dawn. He found Captain Grot, the company commander, at battalion headquarters. Grot was drinking coffee, reviewing casualty reports, looking exhausted, looking ancient despite being 32. Captain, I need to speak with you. Grot looked up, recognized Eddie. Slovik, heard you had trouble on the line. Yes, sir. That's why I'm here. I can't do it, sir. I can't fight. Can or won't. Both, sir. I'm terrified. I freeze. I can't make myself shoot. And I'm going to get men killed because of it. Grot set down his coffee, studied Eddie like he was a problem requiring solution. You understand what you're saying? You're confessing to refusing orders in combat. Yes, sir. You understand the consequences? I want a court-martial, sir. The words came out steadier than Eddie expected. He'd rehearsed them all night, repeated them until they felt real. Grot leaned back. You want a court-martial? Yes, sir. I'll plead guilty to whatever charge you prefer. Cowardice, desertion, whatever. Just don't send me back to the line. I can't go back. Slovik, if I court-martial you for refusing to fight, you could be executed. I know, sir. You'd rather risk execution than go back to combat? Eddie thought about the German boy in the fog, about Davis dying because Eddie wouldn't shoot, about Grimes's face when he realized Eddie had frozen. Yes, sir. I'd rather take my chances with a court-martial than definitely get men killed in combat. Grot picked up a pen, started writing. I'll note your confession. But Slovik, listen carefully. If you recant this now, I'll send you to a non-combat unit, medical orderly, supply clerk, something safe, no charges, clean slate. This is your chance to back out. Eddie shook his head. No, sir. I've made my choice. The trial took place in a cold room in a requisitioned Belgian house. No jury of peers. Just 3 officers, a colonel, 2 captains, all combat veterans. All men who'd shot enemy soldiers without hesitation. Eddie had a defense counsel, Lieutenant Woods, a young JAG officer who looked more scared than Eddie felt. We should plead not guilty, Woods urged before the trial. Argue combat fatigue. Shell shock. The Germans have been treating it as a medical condition. We can say you need treatment, not punishment. But I am guilty, Eddie said. I did refuse to fight. That's not the point. The point is saving your life. I don't want to lie. I did what they say I did. I just want this over with. Woods closed his eyes. You're making my job impossible. The trial began at 0900. The prosecutor, a major named Taylor, presented the Army's case with brutal efficiency. Private Slovik voluntarily confessed, to refusing direct orders to engage the enemy. He did so in writing. He did so repeatedly. He stated explicitly that he would never return to combat duty. This isn't shell shock. This isn't combat fatigue. This is willful disobedience in the face of the enemy. Woods tried, argued Eddie's criminal record, showed a pattern of behavior under stress, argued the Hürtgen combat conditions were unprecedented in their horror, argued Eddie needed treatment, not punishment. The prosecution countered with numbers. 40,000 American soldiers had deserted in Europe, 40,000 men who'd walked away when the fighting got hard. If the Army didn't punish desertion severely, how many more would run? Eddie took the stand. Woods had begged him not to. You'll only hurt yourself. He took it anyway. Taylor questioned him. Private Slovik, did you refuse orders to engage the enemy? Yes, sir. Did you understand that refusing orders in combat is a capital offense? Yes, sir. Yet you refused anyway? I couldn't shoot them, sir. I tried. I just couldn't. Couldn't or wouldn't. Eddie thought about that, about the German boy in the fog, about his finger frozen on the trigger, about the mathematics of fear versus duty. Both, sir. I wouldn't because I couldn't. I couldn't because I wouldn't. They're the same thing. Are you claiming to be a conscientious objector? I don't know what I am, sir. I just know I can't kill. The colonel leaned forward. First time he'd spoken. Private, men are dying on the line right now while you sit here safe. Those men are terrified, too. They shoot anyway. Why are you special? Eddie looked at the colonel. Really looked. Saw ribbons from North Africa, Sicily, Normandy. Saw a man who'd killed dozens, maybe hundreds. Saw someone for whom pulling the trigger was as natural as breathing. I'm not special, sir. I'm just broken in a way that makes me useless to you. I thought confessing would let you find someone who could actually fight. Someone who could do what I can't. The court deliberated for 1 hour. They found him guilty on all charges. The sentence, death by firing squad. Eddie heard the words and felt nothing. Not fear, not relief, just numbness. Just a hollow certainty that he'd finally made a choice that couldn't be unmade. Woods was crying, actually crying. Will appeal, go straight to Eisenhower. He'll commute. He has to. But Eddie knew better. They held Eddie in a stockade in Paris while the appeals process ground forward. American military justice moved slowly, checking every detail, ensuring no mistakes could undermine the verdict. Eddie shared a cell with other military prisoners. Deserters, mostly, black marketeers, men who cracked under pressure, none of them facing execution. Eddie was special, the first American soldier since the Civil War sentenced to death for desertion. The other prisoners treated him with strange respect, like he'd done something brave by getting himself killed. You're a hero, man, said a deserter named Mike, standing up to the system. Saying no, Eddie shook his head. I'm not a hero. I'm just a coward who couldn't shoot. Same thing sometimes. Letters arrived from Antoinette, daily at first, then weekly as hope faded. She'd hired a lawyer, started a petition, written to her congressman, the president, anyone who might intercede. My darling Eddie, I won't let them kill you. I won't. You're too good a man to die for the crime of being unable to murder. That's not a crime. That's humanity. I'm fighting for you. Don't give up. Please don't give up. All my love, Tony. But Eddie had given up. Given up the moment he'd confessed. Maybe before that. Maybe in the foxhole when he'd first understood he couldn't kill. The appeals went nowhere. Division commander. Denied. Corps commander. denied. Army commander, denied. Eisenhower, denied. At every level, the same logic. If we show mercy to Slovik, 40,000 deserters will think they can walk away. We must maintain discipline. We must make an example. Eddie became a number, a statistic, a demonstration of military justice. Not a man, not a human being with a wife who loved him and a future he'd never see. Just an example. They woke Eddie at 0500. He'd been moved to a military prison in eastern France. St. Marie-aux-Mines, a small town where locals whisper about the American who'd been sentenced to die. The chaplain came first. Father Tomas, a gentle man who blessed too many dying soldiers. Do you want to confess, my son? I already confessed, Father. That's why I'm here. I mean sacramental confession. For your soul. Eddie thought about that. What do I confess? Refusing to kill? Is that a sin? The army says it is. What does God say? Father Tomas was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I used to think I knew. But this war, he trailed off, started again. I think God judges hearts, not actions. And your heart seems kin to the most I've encountered in this hell. Then I'll take my chances with God. I'm not confessing to kindness being wrong. They gave him a final meal. Eggs, toast, coffee, real coffee, not the ersatz garbage. Eddie ate without tasting. His mouth was dust. His stomach, stone. At 0900, they led him outside. 11 soldiers waited. The firing squad. Young men, scared men, none of them wanting to be there. Each holding a rifle. Each rifle loaded with 1 live round and 1 blank. The traditional mercy that let each man tell himself maybe he hadn't killed. Eddie recognized one of them. Private Grimes, the farm boy from Iowa who'd been in the next foxhole. Their eyes met. Grimes looked away, looked ashamed. They tied Eddie to a post, offered a blindfold. He refused. I want to see them. Want them to see me. Want them to remember this. The commanding officer, a colonel Eddie didn't recognize, read the orders. The official language of military execution. Formal, bloodless, designed to remove humanity from the act. Eddie looked at the firing squad. 11 terrified boys doing what soldiers do, following orders they hated. He wanted to tell them it was okay, that he forgave them, that this wasn't their fault. But his voice was gone, stolen by fear or acceptance or something between. The colonel raised his hand. Ready. 11 rifles rose to 11 shoulders. Eddie thought of Antoinette, of their tiny apartment in Detroit, of the life they'd almost had. Aim! 11 barrels pointed at his heart. He could see down them, could see the future rushing toward him at 2,800 feet per second. He thought, this is what German soldiers saw. When my squad fired, this terror, this certainty, this end, maybe I was right not to shoot. Fire. 11 rifles spoke as one. Eddie Slovik died instantly. 24 years old. 5 bullets in his heart. 6 near misses. 11 soldiers who'd remember this moment for the rest of their lives. They buried him in Plot E, Row 3, Grave 73. The section reserved for American soldiers executed by their own military. No honors, no flag, just a wooden cross marked with his name and serial number. The Army kept Eddie's execution secret for 2 years. Didn't announce it, didn't publicize it. Just quietly killed him and moved on with fighting the war. When the war ended, reporters found the story. It exploded across America. A soldier executed for refusing to kill? During a war everyone agreed was just. Antoinette fought for 42 years to clear Eddie's name. Fought to have his remains returned for a proper burial. Fought to change the narrative from coward to victim of impossible circumstances. She succeeded in 1987. The Army exhumed Eddie's body from Plot E, gave him a proper burial with military honors in Detroit, the same city where he'd been drafted, the same city where he dreamed of growing old with the woman he loved. The firing squad members? Most never spoke about it. Grimes, the farm boy from Iowa, committed suicide in 1957. His family found a note. Still seeing Eddie's face. Can't make it stop. Was Eddie Slovik a coward? A hero? A victim? Something else entirely? The answer depends on what you value more. Obedience or conscience? Duty or humanity? The ability to kill when ordered versus the inability to kill at all. Eddie chose conscience, chose humanity, chose inability. And the United States Army killed him for it. He remains the only American soldier executed for desertion since the Civil War. The only one who confessed, demanded court-martial, and accepted death rather than return combat. The only one who looked at the machinery of war and said, I can't, I won't. Kill me if you must, but I won't kill for you. They called him a coward. History called him controversial. But maybe, just maybe, it took more courage to face that firing squad than it would have taken to pull the trigger in the forest. Maybe the bravest thing Eddie Slovik ever did was refuse to be brave in the way the Army demanded. Maybe standing in front of 11 rifles, refusing a blindfold, and dying for the principle that some things matter more than survival. Maybe that's a different kind of courage. The kind history struggles to honor because it makes everyone uncomfortable. The kind that asks, if following orders means killing, is disobedience really the greater crime? Eddie Slovik never answered that question. He just lived it, and died for it, and left the rest of us to wrestle with what his death means. 83 years later, the question remains, was executing Eddie Slovik justice or murder? The answer matters because soldiers still face impossible choices, still freeze under fire, still struggle with the command to kill. What do we owe them? Understanding? Punishment? Mercy? The same mercy Eddie Slovik requested and never received? The firing squad that killed him couldn't answer. The army that executed him won't answer. History hasn't answered. Maybe there is no answer. Maybe there's just Eddie Slovik, tied to a post in France, choosing death over killing, and 11 men who had to kill him for making that choice. And maybe that's the real story. Not about cowardice or bravery, but about a system that gave men two choices: kill or be killed. And what happened to the one soldier who refused to choose?